The 11th century was a time of great change and upheaval. Societies were evolving, and the political landscape was in constant flux. This period marked the beginning of significant transformations that would shape the future of Europe and the East. In Europe, Christianity was the dominant faith, deeply influencing every aspect of life. Churches were not just places of worship, but also centers of community life, education, and even political power. Yet, the continent was far from unified. Europe was a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and principalities, each with its own ruler and often conflicting interests. This fragmentation led to frequent conflicts and shifting alliances. Rivalries between kings and princes were common. These power struggles were not just about land and resources, but also about prestige and influence. Knights and nobles often found themselves caught in these disputes, their loyalties tested. The church itself was also divided. Different factions within the church often disagreed on matters of doctrine and authority, leading to internal conflicts and schisms. These divisions weakened the church's ability to present a united front. Power struggles between popes and emperors were a recurring theme. The question of whether spiritual or temporal authority should prevail was hotly debated, leading to confrontations that could destabilize entire regions. Meanwhile, in the east, a new power had arisen, the Seljuk Turks. These formidable warriors were not only skilled in battle, but also adept at governance, establishing a vast and efficient empire. These fierce warriors were Muslims, and their faith played a central role in their conquests. They brought with them a rich cultural and intellectual heritage which would influence the regions they controlled. They had swept out of Central Asia, conquering vast swathes of land. Their expansion was rapid and relentless, bringing them into direct conflict with established powers in the region. The Seljuks defeated the Byzantine Empire at the Battle of Civetot in 1071. This decisive victory not only showcased their military prowess, but also marked a turning point in the balance of power in the region. This victory gave them control of much of Anatolia, the heartland of Byzantine power. The loss of this crucial territory was a severe blow to the Byzantine Empire, weakening its influence and control. The Seljuk advance was a blow to Christendom. The Christian states of Europe viewed the Muslim expansion with alarm, fearing the loss of holy sites and the spread of Islamic influence. Pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land, including Jerusalem, faced increasing danger. The routes that had once been relatively safe were now fraught with peril as reports of attacks and harassment grew more frequent. Stories of attacks and persecution filtered back to Europe. These tales, often exaggerated, fueled a sense of urgency and outrage among the Christian population, leading to calls for action. The Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos viewed the Seljuk Turks as a grave threat. His empire was under constant pressure, and he knew that without external assistance, the situation could become dire. He appealed to the West for help. His plea was not just a call for military aid, but also a request for a united Christian front against a common enemy. His call for aid would not go unanswered. The response from the West was swift and enthusiastic, as knights and nobles rallied to the cause, driven by a mix of religious fervor, personal ambition, and the promise of adventure. The stage was set for a clash of civilizations. The coming conflict would not only be a military struggle, but also a cultural and religious confrontation, with far-reaching consequences for both sides. The First Crusade, launched in 1095, would be a pivotal moment in this struggle. It marked the beginning of a series of campaigns that would reshape the medieval world. It would reshape the political and religious landscape of the Middle East. The Crusades brought new dynamics to the region, altering alliances and power structures in ways that would be felt for centuries. The Crusade would also have a profound and lasting impact on the relationship between East and West. It led to increased contact and exchange, both hostile and peaceful, between the two worlds, influencing their development in myriad ways. The Byzantine Empire, centered in Constantinople, was the heir to ancient Rome. It had preserved much of Roman culture and learning. The Byzantines saw themselves as the defenders of Christendom against the rising tide of Islam. However, by the late 11th century, the empire was in a precarious position. The Seljuk Turks posed an existential threat. They were at the gates of Constantinople itself. Alexios I Komnenos, a shrewd and ambitious emperor, knew that he needed help. He turned to the west, to Pope Urban II, for assistance. Alexios's appeal to the Pope was not without precedent. Byzantine emperors had sought Western aid before. However, the scale of the crisis was now far greater. The very survival of the empire was at stake. Moreover, Alexios was a skilled diplomat. He knew how to play on Western fears and ambitions. The Byzantine Emperor painted a dire picture of the situation in the East. He spoke of Muslim atrocities against Christians. He highlighted the threat to the holy places of Christendom. Alexios promised rewards for those who answered his call. He offered land, riches, and spiritual salvation. His plea for help struck a chord in the West. Pope Urban II was a shrewd and ambitious leader. His vision extended far beyond the immediate needs of his time, and he was always looking for ways to strengthen the Church and consolidate its power. He saw in Alexios's request an opportunity to achieve several goals. This was not just a chance to assist a fellow Christian leader, but a strategic move to expand the influence of the papacy. Firstly, he could heal the schism that had divided the Western and Eastern churches for centuries. The Great Schism of 1054 had left a deep rift, and Urban saw a united Christendom as a powerful force. Secondly, he could unite the fractious princes of Europe under the banner of a common cause. The constant infighting among European nobility weakened the continent, and a unified effort could bring peace and stability. Finally, he could rally Christendom to liberate the Holy Land from Muslim rule. The Holy Land held immense religious significance, and reclaiming it would be a monumental achievement for the Church. In November 1095, Pope Urban II convened the Council of Clermont in France. This was a pivotal moment, carefully orchestrated to maximize impact. Thousands of people flocked to hear him speak. The anticipation was palpable, as word had spread about the Pope's important announcement. The Pope delivered a stirring sermon that would change the course of history. His words were carefully chosen to inspire and mobilize the masses. He spoke of the suffering of Christians in the East. Tales of persecution and hardship were recounted, painting a vivid picture of the dire situation. He urged his listeners to take up arms and reclaim the Holy Land. This was not just a call to battle, but a divine mission, a holy war sanctioned by God. Let those who have been accustomed unjustly to wage private warfare against the faithful now go against the infidels. Urban's call was a direct appeal to the warrior class, offering them a noble cause. Let those who for a long time have been robbers now become knights. He offered redemption and purpose to those who had lived by the sword. Let those who have been fighting against their brothers and relatives now fight in a proper way against the barbarians. This was a chance to channel their aggression into a righteous cause. Urban's words ignited a firestorm of religious fervor. The crowd was moved, their spirits lifted by the promise of divine favor and eternal glory. The crowd erupted in shouts of Deus vult, God wills it. This became the rallying cry of the Crusaders, a unifying chant that echoed across Europe. The First Crusade had begun. What started as a call to aid the Byzantines quickly grew into a massive military campaign. What began as a limited expedition to aid the Byzantines quickly transformed into a mass movement. The response was overwhelming, far exceeding Urban's expectations. Men and women from all walks of life took up the cross, vowing to liberate Jerusalem. This was a people's movement, transcending social and economic boundaries, united by faith and purpose. The response to Urban's call was overwhelming. The fervor and passion that swept through the medieval world were unlike anything seen before. Thousands of people, inspired by religious zeal and the hope of a better life, heeded the summons. They left behind their homes, their families, and their livelihoods, driven by a powerful mix of faith and desperation. This first wave of crusaders, known as the People's Crusade, was a mixed multitude. It was a diverse assembly of individuals from all walks of life, united by a common goal, but divided by their backgrounds and experiences. It included seasoned knights, but also peasants, artisans, and even women and children. The presence of such a varied group added to the complexity and unpredictability of the journey. Led by the charismatic but unpredictable preacher Peter the Hermit, the People's Crusade embarked on a journey fraught with danger and hardship. Peter's fiery sermons and impassioned speeches inspired many, but his lack of strategic planning would soon become evident. Lacking proper supplies and discipline, they plundered their way across Europe. Their desperation for food and resources often led to violent confrontations and looting, further complicating their mission. The Crusaders often faced hostility from the local populations. Their aggressive behavior and disregard for local customs made them unwelcome guests in many regions. Anti-Semitism was rampant, and many Jews were massacred along the way. The Crusaders' religious fervor often turned into violent fanaticism, leading to tragic and senseless bloodshed. The People's Crusade arrived in Constantinople in a state of disarray. Their journey had taken a toll on their numbers and morale, and they were far from the disciplined force they had hoped to be. Their lack of discipline and their plundering alienated the Byzantines. The Byzantine Emperor Alexios I was wary of this unruly mob and their unpredictable behavior. Alexios I, hoping to be rid of this unruly mob, quickly ferried them across the Bosporus into Asia Minor. He saw them as a potential threat to his own empire and was eager to move them along. The People's Crusade met a tragic end. Their lack of preparation and military strategy left them vulnerable to the well-organized Seljuk forces. The Seljuk Turks, led by Kilij Arslan, routed them at the Battle of Civetot in October 1096. The Crusaders were no match for the experienced and disciplined Seljuk army. Thousands of Crusaders were slaughtered. The battlefield was strewn with the bodies of those who had set out with such high hopes and fervent faith. Peter the Hermit barely escaped with his life. His charismatic leadership had led many to their deaths, and he returned to Europe a broken man. The disaster highlighted the need for strong leadership and military discipline. The chaos and tragedy of the People's Crusade served as a harsh lesson for future expeditions. The stage was now set for the arrival of the Prince's Crusade. This new wave of crusaders would be better organized, better equipped, and led by experienced military leaders, ready to continue the quest for the Holy